Zohran Mamdani has become the mayor of New York City, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. Everything is going to fail in that city. It comes down to 9 words, just 9 words that this man has said that are going to spell absolute destruction. And if you follow this at all, you will probably be able to forecast these 9 words, because it's not one of these sort of, what would you call it, woke ideology things. It's not one of these identity politics sort of things that he will say from time to time. No, 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 no. It is much more governmental than that. It is much more stupid than even any of that. It comes down to just 9 words: the end goal of seizing the means of production. He said these words. There are arguments, and we'll get into one of them. There are arguments against believing that seizing the means of production is anything nefarious. But those arguments cannot hold up in light of this word right here, seizing. You do not innocently seize anything. Not when you're talking about the government, okay? I don't really believe that the government innocently does very much at all, let alone seizing anything. Now, this is a phrase that, from the nearest I can tell, does not actually come from the Communist Manifesto. It comes from a different Engels and Marx essay called Socialism, Utopia, and Scientific. Now, one thing for which we have to congratulate Karl Marx. One of the reasons that Karl Marx has been as effective long after his death, more effective than he was in his lifetime, by the way. More effective. I mean, he could have worked minimum wage for a week and been more actually productive than he was with the rest of his life. But very, very talented writer. And pseudo-intellectuals cannot part ways with beautifully phrased things. There is a specter haunting Europe, the specter of communism. One of the greatest opening lines in all of literature. I just have to say it. I'm a literature guy. I have a YouTube channel called Stripped Cover Lit, where I talk about literature. I believe it's linked in the comments below, or the description below. I can't remember if I've done that or not. But I spend a lot of time with words. Karl Marx was able to put some words together in very pretty fashion. The quote that most closely resembles the phrasing "seizing the means of production" that I can find, and no Marx scholar, by the way, just doing some Googling, just doing some chat GPTing, the closest I could find was this: the proletariat seizes the public power, and by means of this transforms the socialized means of production, slipping from the hands of the bourgeoisie into public property. And that does not come from, again, the Communist Manifesto. It comes from Socialism, Utopia, and Scientific. Had never heard of that article before, paper before, essay before, whatever you want to call it. But apparently that's the closest approximation that you get in Marx to this phrase, seizing the means of production. Oftentimes, that argument is what is used against saying that what Zohran Mamdani was saying was straight up communism. Semantics. This is an argument not just for communism, but that communism is supreme and will rule you, whether you like it or not, because of, once again, this word right here: seize the means of production. So the more well thought out arguments against this being an absolutely terrifying quote from anyone who dares to assume power is more of a filibuster than anything else. But this is how it normally goes. I have gotten this from PolitiFact in an article by Amy Sherman. What Mamdani said in 2021. About a month after taking office in 2021, Mamdani spoke to a Young Democratic Socialists of America virtual conference. Throughout his roughly 40-minute remarks, and this is hiding the ball. Throughout his roughly 40-minute remarks, saying that he spoke for so long there was going to be some type of misspeaking. No, this is a very specific and particular phrase. Mamdani praised democratic socialism. The relevant portion of the clip starts at around minute 10, when he spoke about acting on an agenda based on conviction of beliefs, whether they are popular or not. Whether you like it or not, this is what I'm going to do when I have power. There is no truth but power. That's what these people believe. But then there are also other issues that we firmly believe in. Whether it's BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions of Israel, right? Or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support at this very moment. Where we don't have the same level of support at this very moment. But we're going to manufacture it because we're going to have the power. And when we have the power, well, you have to agree. Because if you don't, we have the power and we will use it. That's what communism is. That's all that communism is. That's all that communism ever devolves into. So this whole argument against, because the general gist of the argument from which I got this is that, we really don't know what Zohran Mamdani meant about that. Who's to say that it was something absolutely dreadfully evil? I don't think it could have been dreadfully evil. It came out of Zohran Mamdani's mouth, and look at that smile. That little shit-eating grin that he has. He couldn't be evil, could he? The article continues. And what I want to say is that it is critical that the way we organize, the way that we set up our work and our priorities, that we do not leave any one issue for the other, that we do not meet a moment and only look at what people are ready for. Because screw them, right, Zohran? But that we are doing both of these things in tandem, because it is critical for us both to both meet people where they are and also to organize for what is correct. Because correct must be Zohran Mamdani, and for what is right, and to ensure over time we can bring people to that issue. We can make them believe what we tell them. That's communism. What was that a clear call for communism? It's about as clear as anything could be. It's about as clear as anything can be, short of saying, hey guys, give me power so that I can just do all the communist things that I can, and the things that I can't do that are communist, you're wrong about those anyway, so we're going to go ahead and do them. That's as seizing the means of production is as close to a call for communism as anything can be. In fact, probably 50% of the time that someone calls for communism, it's a joke. Because communism is ridiculous. I would imagine 95 to 99% of the time that someone calls for seizing the means of production, it's just serious. It's straight up, flat out, pillar to post, a call for communism. Meaning that if I were to say, hey, we need to seize the means of production, the odds are probably higher that I am calling for communism than if I said, hey, let's all be communist. absolutely ridiculous premise for an argument here. Experts in political parties and movements said Mamdani's passing remark is associated with communism, but it's hard to say much more about Mamdani's views because he did not elaborate. You do not have to elaborate on the phrase, "we need to steal people's stuff." How much elaboration is needed there? How much is called for? How much would be, I don't know, necessary for anyone else to understand what it is to which you are referring? Ted Hinken, a Baruch College sociology and Cuban culture professor, very hoity-toity, very highbrow, said whether seizing the means of production qualified as communist would depend on policy depth. Many capitalist countries seize control of strategic areas of production or service. Oils and minerals is a good example in Mexico and Brazil. Hinken said, "No, that is not what Zohran Mamdani said. Zohran Mamdani said, seize the means of production. Take the way that stuff is made." Why do communists have to take the way that stuff is made? Because communists don't build anything. Communists can't build anything, mainly because communists are morons. Communists don't understand the way that things are made. That's why they're communist. That's why Karl Marx came up with this entire theory. He had no idea how to do anything. Karl Marx couldn't wipe his own butt. Read into Karl Marx's life. Tell me that is the philosophical leader to which you aspire. And I know, I understand. Again, I'm a literature guy. I love Charles Bukowski. I love Emily Dickinson. Probably wouldn't want to be them. But you don't have to listen to how Charles Bukowski would run your life to understand his philosophy. You don't have to listen to Emily Dickinson's philosophy on how she would have you act in order to learn from the way that she wrote. None of that is true. Communists tell you what you can and cannot do. Seizing the means of production means someone else figured out how to build something, and we're going to steal it. That is what it is to seize the means of production. Minerals, oil, those are in the ground. If the government decides that they're the ones that actually own them, well, yeah, probably that's what's going to happen. But who is it that extracts them? Oftentimes, it's a private company. That private company gets to make money, and they owe a very large percentage of it to the government, but they still get to make their profits. That's how capitalism works. That's how capitalism works. If I grow tomatoes, but I don't want to pick them, I say, hey, you have rights to my garden. But every tomato you sell, I want 5 cents. I don't have to plant the tomatoes. I don't have to pick the tomatoes. I don't have to take the tomatoes to the market. I don't have to sell them. I own the land from which those tomatoes spring. From whence tomatoes. Because of that, I can let you do all of the work and just take the money. But that's not the same thing as letting you do all of the work and then stealing everything that you did. That's what it means to seize the means of production. It is an absolutely evil ideology. It is an absolutely lazy ideology. It is an absolutely bunk ideology that people follow when they just don't understand anything. At that point, why would anyone do any work? If you know the government's going to come in and seize the means of production, like Zohran Mamdani likes to say in one of his accents, why figure anything out? Why do anything? Where's the motivation? Communism has never worked. New York has fallen. It will not take long. If any of his communist, mumbo-jumbo, ridiculous ideas get weaseled into government in New York, the city will fall. And I do not mean that lightly. The city will fall. It has withstood so many things. And I'm no New York fan, but it has withstood so many things. And one weasel who thinks he's a revolutionary could be all it takes. That is all I have for this video. I hope to have you back for the next one.